You exploded into random
Good,
Dave.
that, innit? It's fancy, that.
That's lovely. Have you got transitions or whatever they're called?
I made myself some fancy animated transitions.
Oh, yeah.
Because I'm all fancy and shit.
Mute.
I'm still
Too
waiting
much
for it to
time
load
against.
so I can see it, even though I wasn't invited. Whoa, let's mute this shit. All right, I see the random one talking.
Oh, you missed it. Do it again, random.
Right.
In the meantime, good evening, everybody. I don't know how loud I am. I can't see on the thing. Let me look. Oh, it was a little hot. Hello, everybody. Random Dave has made some fancy animations, and he's showing them off now.
Okay, there we go.
He's also been streaming...
I did have a Pac-Man one that was half implemented, but I don't know where that is.
It's the file called pacman.transition. A few people in chat. I see an Irish gentleman. Well, I don't know about gentleman, but he's Irish. It's near enough.
He seems all right.
And I see a Chris Lethgo and a Retro Hamer. So, welcome to live news for April 2019. We are, I think, a week or just over a week away from Play Manchester, which I'll be going to. Aidy's coming up. I think the group...
I am so glad you clarified Play Manchester, because we were just talking about planning for the other expo.
Yes,
I'm like, oh yeah, it's like 6 weeks off, and you're like, next week. I'm like, what the?
I think the Goobmeister might be coming up. Random, are you coming over?
I hadn't planned to. I'll see. I'll think about it.
Okay. I'm not sure about Little Ben if he's coming. He's not said so. So I'll assume in the
Maria
negative.
on time for the weekend?
Possibly. It's possible. Depends how good he's been of late.
How much wedding planning he's done.
Yeah. True that. What have I been up to this month? Mainly playing Assetto Corsa and Grand Prix Legends on my brand new, fully, completely mine G25 wheel and pedals and gear shifter and all that goodness.
I'm gonna have to look that up.
Assetto Corsa, it's excellent. Not sure how old it is, a few years old, but it does support VR, which I'll be looking at some point. I just need a bit of a better graphics card, which is incoming. I just need to go to Ben's and pick it up.
Oh, do you have that stand they sell for it?
I've not got any of the kit yet. I'm just... I need a better graphics card first. Oh, do you mean the G25?
Yeah, so I was looking at the G25, and I see here this company makes like an adjustable stand for it that looks pretty trick. Yeah,
it comes with... it's Random Dave's, actually. It's on permanent loan. It comes with all the mounting kit to put it in, a proper racing seat and all of that. So it's a decent bit of kit. Could do with a couple more buttons on the wheel. I think the G27 has 6 buttons. This has got 2, but it'll do for now. It's nice. Because my previous one...
It's got the proper number of pedals, so that's good.
It has, yeah. My previous one only had 2 pedals, so this has got the old clutch as well. So I've been playing a ton of Assetto Corsa, just basically hot lapping pretty much all the cars and all the tracks, and installing some mod ones. There are people have written mods for it, so it's as simple as unzipping a folder you downloaded, put it in the right place on your C drive, and you get a new car and a new circuit. So I've been adding a few of those. There's a weather mod that you can add that gives you nighttime as well and changing light conditions and headlights and all that, but I need the graphics card to run that, so things will be improving shortly, but it's brilliant just as a stock game. It's really good. Really good. I still prefer the handling on Grand Prix Legends, the physics on that's just unbelievable. So I think that's pretty much it for me, what I've been up to this month.
Well, I have been busy, and I got some cool gaming stuff done. I followed up on some things I was talking about last show, and I'm actually reaching here for something I wanted to remember so I don't forget. Yes. So, first up, I was talking about picking up an Xbox, right? Because I've kind of played what's available for the PS4. There's about 4 games coming out over the year, and one of them I've already got. The other one I think comes out in 2 days, and then there's only 2 more games like at the end of the year. So the PS4 is going to be a little dry this year. The Switch is continuing to be a desert of games for anybody but 9 to 11-year-old girls. So no new Zelda, no new Mario, nothing really cool. So what are you going to do, right? So I figured I'll pick up a Xbox One, which I did. And the major thing that I picked it up for initially and that I'm following through on is since we've incorporated some of the newer retro game systems like the Xbox, into this program, I wanted to go back and play Halo series. I've read up on it here and there, some of the legend and lore, and I think it's a wonderful story. It really is. But when I first tried just a little bit to play it, on an Xbox back when the Xbox was and Halo was the hottest thing going, it was just unplayable for me. Those stupid little aliens that just do that sort of sideways shuffle thing. By the time you get a sight anywhere near them, they just shuffle out of view, and it was just a miserable experience. And games are supposed to be fun, not miserable experiences. So I was curious what Microsoft had done with the Xbox compared to what PlayStation had done with the PS4 to make games more accessible to non-double thumb gamers. And I'm pretty pleased to report out of the games I picked up, and mostly playing through the original Halo series, I am pretty impressed. They incorporated like modern aiming, some graphical model updates that make, figuring out what you're actually shooting at better. The Warthog is still undrivable. I mean, there's times I just get out of it and walk because it's easier than trying to, you lose more troops to that thing rolling over than you do, actually just walking. So, I have to say that it's really neat because I've been actually able to progress through Halo. I'm really enjoying it. Some of the battles, like, where you beam up to the Truth and Reconciliation and, go through an alien ship and all, that has been a really fun experience. Even just the initial bit where you get shot down and land on the Halo ring. But actually being able to progress, actually being able to see what's next. I have truly, really enjoyed that. So, I'm going to go back through the Xbox library and play through some of the classics that have been enhanced so that they're more accessible. And I will definitely have some more things to bring to the show, in sort of the newer retro gaming. So I'm pretty happy with that. I've got a box here for Chris Leithco. Finally, and it includes, because I was looking around, and each time I thought, okay, I'm ready to mail this, I found like another thing that I thought I should send him. So I've got a couple things here. So the delay is worth it because there's more going in the box, but it is a thing. I like, oh, there's one thing there, another thing there, and the other thing there. So Chris's box is getting more items to it, so, yay him. The other thing, the big story in Scott's Arcade, is I finally got one of the remaining Holy Grails, of which there are a few these days. I absolutely want to pick up Orbiter 1. I kind of know where one is that I'll probably eventually end up with, I hope. But that's a pinball I'm still after. And there's a few other ones. But one of the ones I've been after now for about 3-4 years is since I picked up the Ferrari 355 Challenge Simulator, the 3-screen simulator. One of the things I've really, really, really been after is the version 2. So there's version 1, and version 1 has a pretty good selection of tracks, So what they do with version 2 is they added in a bunch more tracks, Sepang, mostly important, of course, Fiorano, which is Ferrari's own test track, So the only chance I'm ever going to get to drive a 355 around Fiorano is in this game. So it's extraordinarily limited release. It was released in Asia only, and not that many of them. Kind of makes you wonder why they went through all the trouble of doing it. So I got the simulator up and running, and then began the quest to find version 2. I found one whole computer box in Australia, and it was like $2,500, which is almost what I paid for the game, and then international shipping, right? Well, the guy talked to me for a while, and I said, all right, well, what do you want? When can you ship it, and how do you want to get paid? And then he finally comes back, I sold it locally. It was less trouble than shipping it. Great, thanks. So another Aussie, the good Aussie, stepped up and sent me a message and said, hey, this guy has ROM sets, and it was, I've got it pulled up here to make sure I give proper credit. Peter Gibbs of Australia, in Matcham, NSW. Was it, Michael, Australia well. NSW, where is that at?
New South Wales, towards the southeast.
They've done some improvements from the original model, right?
Yeah, the old South Wales was rubbish.
So, anyway, I want to give a big shout out to Peter Gibbs. He was super awesome in that he said, hey, this guy has these, right? So I'm like, okay, let's kind of follow up on this. So I hit the guy up with a message, and I said, hey, I definitely want one of these things. And it ended up being an amazing experience. The guy had access to some of the prototype boards for the Naomi. So it's got a bunch of Intel flash chips and then the security ROM. So he actually burned these and, sorted everything out so it worked. And he shipped that to me. It was only $500 for it, which was a tremendous upgrade. So I got it, plugged it in, set up all the parameters so it knew what game it was in, what cabinet, what network, all that. And proceeded to play it. And it has been an amazing experience to have those extra tracks. Mike is a race enthusiast. How awesome that is to have the full piece of kit without the mysterious bit missing. So
yeah.
I could not be happier. I am just amazed. So I got a little thank you box for him too. So Peter, again, thanks. Awesome. It worked out. The guy had 3 of them. I got number 1. Somebody else got number 2, and I presume by now number 3 is long since gone. So I could not be happier than having all these tracks available.
What have I been up to? I started a YouTube Let's Play for our YouTube channel of Steel Battalion. Finally decided to do that as a way to make me sit and actually play through it all. So hoping to sort of flesh out our YouTube channel a bit with some exclusive video content, but then also some of the stuff that goes into the podcast will go onto the YouTube channel as a video, but after the show's come out, which isn't so much for the normal listeners. That's people maybe coming in and then discovering the videos and then realizing it's a podcast and maybe checking the podcast out. So I ended up getting into a bit of a deep well of messing about with motion graphics again and having a bit of fun from my intros, and then I ended up turning some into some animated transitions, which you'll see in my window in a second. I've managed to find the Pac-Man and I've stuck that in there now. So that it's not brilliant yet. It needs a bit of a tweak. I've got a few ideas as well of other ones to make for other videos. So that sort of took a bit of time, and then Mr. Hamer, he ended up. I sent him a keyboard because he wanted a keyboard, and he's a good patron. That's the word.
That's the word.
So it's the least we can do is send him stuff, but he wouldn't have that, and he looked at my Steam wish list and bought me Cuphead. So I've been playing a bit of Cuphead, which is a good sort of throwback boss rush side-scrolling shooter, and that's not had a massive amount of time to play on it as I'd like, but I've spent a good few hours swearing at it, so that's been very good, and I'm very grateful to him. I think that's probably about it, really. So yeah, it's been a bit of a sort of get things ready so that I can then start cranking out these Let's Play videos nice and easily. At the moment, I was thinking I'm going to do a review at the start of the month on the channel, and then 2 weeks later, an episode of the Let's Play, and then obviously get to the next month and repeat that. But I'm up to about 5 episodes in so far, and not actually got that far through the game because I've been shit and died a bit. So
I saw you dying.
Oh no, that was I died in the first episode, but then I did I managed to record 2 episodes the other day, where in both episodes I died twice and didn't actually finish the level I was trying to complete.
Nice.
There's some audio issues with them anyway, so they might become like lost-ish episodes, and I might come back to that later. We'll see. But yeah, I might need to increase the frequency, because at this rate, if I release it one a month, I'll have finished the recording of it in probably 3 or 4 months' time, but the actual videos will then run for the next 3 years or something.
That's called good. That means getting ahead.
Well, yeah, I mean, but then I'll be like, well, I might, start the next series, and I'll record all of them, and they'll never see the light of day because I'll never run out of other episodes. But we'll see how it goes.
Then you start releasing those. Take a look at Focus RS's Willie Culver's YouTube channel. He literally has like 6 different concurrent shows running that release like overlapped. He has like 1 million shows coming out of there. It's pretty cool.
Well, I suppose that's the other thing. Yeah, I could sort of, if I've got enough content built up, which is the plan, it's, now that I've got everything in place, it's easy to produce these episodes. Yeah, I could do like one game this week, one game the next week, and at some point I'm going to be able to put out, 3 or 4 shows a month at least, and not really put any effort in because I've recorded it all and it's all there. So that's the beauty of it, I guess. So hopefully we'll have some more interesting stuff going up on the YouTube channel.
Once I get my graphics card, I plan on streaming some racing sessions. A few different cars, different tracks, but I need the graphics card for that. I might try and get it off Ben this weekend. See what he's up to. So, a warning, not all Random Dave's videos have a happy ending because he dies in a lot of them. Seems to be the takeaway from that.
Dave seems to be a lot shitter at Steel Battalion than he thought he used to be. Yeah. It might be because I'm trying to be interesting and talk a lot. That's my excuse. So maybe I'll buckle up and shut up for some of them. We shall see. I'll run out of like bits of the UI to talk about sooner or later. There's only so many times you can discuss the rev gauge and the damage meter and like the various call signs on the radio and things.
Probably. We got some Game of Thrones gifts for you this month.
Oh boy! Speaking of which, let me interject real quick. Since I assume we've all watched.
Yes.
Where are we at with this? What do we think?
I think it's just setting things up. I mean, the next episode is going to be like the middle Lord of the Rings film, where who comes out the other side after an hour of fighting.
Yeah.
He's
We've basically had
the
this
next
big
episode.
Reunion of everyone bumping back into each other, and then 50% of them aren't going to make it through the next week.
Yeah,
perhaps.
Yeah.
I just keep thinking back to in my brain. I keep replaying the bit of Giantsbane drinking out of the horn and pouring it all down his face and just giggling to myself. And like every sort of 4 hours or so, that'll just flick into my brain again, and I just sit there giggling like an idiot. Well, funny.
I tell you what, the first episode, I started off, I was real interested, like, hey, Game of Thrones is back, right? And like 5-10 minutes in, it's still just more talking and more inanity. And I see a meme pop up on my phone. I go look at it, and I send it to somebody else. I look back at Game of Thrones. Oh, I was going to order that thing off of eBay. Let me go on there, okay? And it more or less just played through in the background, and the ending wasn't really an ending. Nothing happened, and I was like, oh, shit, I hope this isn't the season. And the one that just came out the episode 2.
Mm-hmm.
Better, not thrilling, but nice. I don't know. When you're doing a short season and you have a lot of ground to cover, you think you'd want to get moving a little more quickly, you know.
You would do, but I think maybe all, or at least some of the remaining episodes are feature length. They're not just an hour.
And if you front load all the talkie, then you can just have a complete episode of badass battles for, an entire hour of just people kicking the shit out of each other.
You know what I enjoyed about Game of Thrones? Honestly, was the character development. Mindless, battle is only so entertaining. I mean, after about 2 minutes of hearing, axes and swords and shields thump around, you're kind of done with it, It's really that's why Vikings got so stale, because that's all it was, the setup, the talking. I mean, you don't need it. You've had 7 years of it. Get the fuck on with the point, But especially like some of the stuff, like when they were really get into like the family wars, like, between, the midget and his family and everything else. That was awesome stuff. I mean, I saw a cardboard cutout of Tyrion with the crossbow, like, so that you can like put it in your bathroom, that was some great stuff, and right now it just seems like, all right, we're going to get talking and a endless battle, and that'll be kind of the end of the whole thing. So I don't know. I'm hesitant. I hope it improves. Episode 1, not very impressed. Episode 2, it was watchable. It is okay.
We shall see.
I saw something pretty funny, though. The girl that plays Arya,
mm-hmm.
she was on Twitter saying that the one that plays Sansa had like texted her and said, "Oh my God, if you read the script, you've got a sex scene, right?" And her reaction was, "I got to get to the gym now."
Yeah, that seemed to be a pretty popular meme, that one.
Oh, yeah, wanted the hammer, got the needle.
Yeah. Was it Retro Hamer or Chris Lethko? I think it was Retro Hamer said he feels the Battle of the Dead's come a bit early, but it's going to be next episode. There's only, I think, 3 after that, and there's a lot of shit to get through after that, They've got to sort out quite a bit of stuff, so I don't know about too early. It's been dragging on for a season or 2 at least. So let's get to it.
Speaking of getting to it,
let's get some news in done.
What a segue.
See? Wow. One here that's an article on Eurogamer. It's probably old news now, probably nearly a month old. Apple reportedly working on a premium games subscription for the App Store. Apple Arcade, it's called. I don't know if there's any new information. I've not really read up on it recently. There wasn't too much at the time, but they're doing a gaming service, as are just about everybody else at the moment now. I don't really care.
Yeah, I don't know where that's going to go, because, how many gaming services do you need? Apple, they make a good phone, they make a good laptop, but what else do they really do? They just try to sort of extract maximum cash for minimum value on a lot of projects that aren't what they do best. So, I don't know.
Yeah.
Got one here from, sorry about this coughing, it's just, I don't really generally have allergies, but there is so much tree gook in the air. I mean, I opened up my garage, took out a car, and it was actually already pre-covered in yellow just from the shit that snuck into the garage door. This is ridiculous. Got one here from Mike James, and it says valuable VHS tapes, because there's a collector for everything. I have no doubt. And there's about 11 images here of various things, Star Wars, some kids shows, Barney, I guess, So people are collecting VHS tapes, and because it's a finite supply and an interest, I guess the prices are going up accordingly. So there's a collector for everything, including inferior value, inferior quality video with no redeeming value.
If anyone hipsters want some seriously nice VHS players to play these on, hit me up. I can sell you some. Actually, I don't think I've got one maybe lying around now, but I had a fucking amazing Sony one that felt like it was just made out of old ammo boxes. At some point in the 80s, they just found a load of like tanks lying around and just built a VHS player out of it. It was amazing, beautiful thing that was.
It's funny. You've seen vinyl players come back into production. Still the remaining 8-track players are repairable, and you've yet to see a new one in production. Cassette players, there's still new ones in production, including some premium ones that are nice.
And some of them are very collectible as well.
Oh, yeah. I wonder if we'll reach a point where we actually see new production VCRs, for that sort of market. There's a lot of them out there. The ones that are out there still work. I mean, they hit sort of a zenith of technology where they had the stereo out and, floating heads and all that. So I don't know if anyone's going to make one again, but I would be surprised if I saw a new VCR go into production.
I don't think so. I think DVDs are struggling these days, aren't they? Yeah. So, and Christ, like watching a DVD now, like DVD quality video, just like I remember that looking absolutely the bee's knees. That was fucking amazing when we went to DVD, and then now it's just like you just kind of like fucking hell, like someone just peel my eyes out and smash me over the face with them, because that's preferable to watching this, which is nuts. Which is and also very weird, because I'll play N64 games, but watching something on DVD, it just seems so bad. But hey,
graphics whore.
I know, right? So I've got one here from Mike James again. He had a busy start of the month. It's Revolution Software unveils Beneath the Steel Sky sequel, and it's out this year. So you'll probably all know Beneath the Steel Sky. If you don't, is it actually public domain, or is it just free? They don't care about it so much, and you can basically just get it, and it will run on ScumVM, so it'll run on anything, even if plus there's official versions anyway out there for many platforms. But yeah, it's a point-and-click adventure game developed by Revolution Software, and they are making a sequel, which I was going to say, which I haven't heard much about them making any Broken Sword, which is what they were up to quite a lot, apart from helping out with the BBC Doctor Who adventure games. But it does actually say here that they will begin work on the sequel when they finish completion of Broken Sword 5. That must have... close to becoming in 2012. They said they were going to... I was going to say Broken Sword 5 Serpent's Curse, I thought came out. Yeah, they were going to start it then. And I guess we never heard anything from it since. So that's quite... If they've been in pre-production for a couple of years on it, I suppose adventure game, you're going to do it properly. That could take quite a while. Engine and stuff for it, I would have thought is pretty rote for them these days. But unless they're going to do something really sort of clever with it, perhaps, we shall see. Could be fun. A bit of Orwellian 1984 style dystopia stuff back into adventure gaming.
Pointy clicky.
Got one here from Mike James. That we hit this one last month, but it's still a topic I've been thinking about Nintendo going to a parallel development path for the Switch. And, kind of like they did with the 3DS and the 2DS and the 3DS XL and all those. That they're going to come up with like a premium model for gamers and, hardcore gamers, whatever. If there was the software there to support it, if there were so many games, like there's, amazing new Zelda that's even bigger than, Breath of the Wild or whatever. Okay, great. The software's not there. The games aren't there. So, meh. Maybe you should make games instead of hardware for games that don't exist.
Well, there's been an update on that this week, and it sounds like the more powerful model is basically, it's still on the drawing board. People are still figuring out what they'd want to do with it. There's always been speculation of an easy jump in hardware because there was the Tegra 2 chip that NVIDIA launched just before the Switch launched, and they could step up to that and it would be a lot more powerful. The problem there is patching the games to support, extra, even just like, bumping them up to 1440p or 4K resolution or something. It's going to need going back and reworking a lot of them. Some of it, I did wonder if it was maybe a bit of truth for it. Would they announce the Labo VR stuff that the whole of Zelda you can drop into VR while you're playing it, which like Zelda originally played like shit at times. The frame rate was not good, and it's not going to be good on VR, and the dynamic resolution would drop down quite heavily. So being able to put a bit more grunt into that may have been good, but it sounds like that's very much on the back burner.
Possibly for a 2-year-old, 3-year-old by the time this thing comes out game that, I know I've beaten twice. How about you launch? If you're going to do this right, if you're going to get me to go out and buy one, if you're going to get most people to go out and buy one, you better have a new Mario, a new Zelda, some other classics from the stable, and some new and interesting games, at least about another 12 to 20 games in addition to the hardware. And right now, I look at the new releases, I see what's coming out, and it's just a lot of meh.
Yeah, it sounds like we may hear about the portable. I'll say the portable when it's portable anyway. But the smaller, lighter, more child-proof, possibly replacement for the 3DS. Might hear about that around E3 time, perhaps.
I don't know if they announced anything about that. Whether it wasn't going to be dockable, it was just portable. But now I read a rumor, I can't remember where it was, that it is going to be dockable after all. So.
I think it'd be dockable because if you think about it, the dock's an open-ended, just a slice. So even if the controllers, the Joy-Cons are built in and they can't be removed, it will still fit in the original dock without any problems.
Yeah.
It might not ship with a dock, so it might be aimed at, you've already bought one and the parents are going to keep that and buy you a little, a cheaper one for you kids, and they'll have that, but you can still plug it into the dock that's under the TV from the first one or something like that. That'd be a way to keep the cost down.
I heard another rumour as well that there's a Switch emulator that's quite well advanced. Just how well advanced I don't know, but quite well advanced.
That's been around for a while, and yeah, it's pretty. I think it's going to be pretty good because that, the Tegra platform has been pretty much open and known about, all the technical documentation for it for probably 5 years now or something. So I'd imagine NVIDIA had official emulators, whether they were performant or not, I don't know, whether they were just, to get to know that the instructions were correct if the software is compiling properly. But that sort of technology will have been around for quite a while. Yeah.
So there's some bad news and some good news. The bad news is EA confirms it's laying off around 350 employees. The good news is, and I can't help but think we mentioned this last month, Stern announces its next pin, which is going to be an update of Black Knight. Black Knight, what was it called? Sword of something? Sword of Rage. Black Knight Sword of Rage is the new Stern pinball. I'm not a big fan of the Black Knight games. But I think it was also Glenn Minette, and I think me later on as well, who also submitted a pinball story, which I find a bit more exciting than Black Knight. And that's Jersey Jack's new game, which is Willy Wonka themed. The original Gene Wilder era Willy Wonka, not the later Tim Burton, Johnny Depp one. And I think it's a great theme to pick. I mean, I love the film anyway. I loved it as a kid. We all were of the same mind, I think, when they announced the Wizard of Oz theme. But once you've played it, you'll realise what a great game it is. I do enjoy playing that. I'm going to play it at Play Manchester because no doubt it will be there. It always is. Always has a queue for it. It's a wonderful game. And I think Willy Wonka will be equally as good. if not
I've
better.
no problem with that as a franchise. Again, I watched it. I had a VHS that I would have worn out. It was taped off the telly, and watched that no end of times. Read the book thousands of times. I had a cassette audio book of it. And then I even quite liked the newer one, the Johnny Depp one. It was a very different portrayal of Willy Wonka himself, and it was like a bit weird and creepy. But that's kind of what I liked about it. Yeah. So yeah, it's happy to see that come.
Definitely.
Was it worth?
One there from Random Dave. Shovel Knight.
So yeah, I also sent in the Black Knight, and then I sent in one about the Shovel Knight developers unveiling their new latest 8-bit style game. Finally, have released enough Shovel Knight DLC packs to move on to their next thing. And it's a kind of they've gone rather than Mega Man this time. They've gone for Ninja Gaiden style platforming action. A game called Cyber Shadow. And so, as it sounds, you're a kind of, I don't know whether the cybers, how much robotic and or cybernetic things that entails, but the Shadow is obviously a nod to sort of Shadow, the Ninja Gaiden 2's subtitle of Shadow Warrior, presumably. Whether there's any stealth in it, we'll see. Ninjas hiding in the shadows, bit of stealth could be a way, but. They've got a release date. There's no release date. They've got a price though, so that seems a bit of an odd way around to do it. You'd say we're hoping to release in August. We don't know the price yet, but maybe around this perhaps. But yeah, they're saying it will be £11.39, which is a very strange amount, or $14.99, which seems a bit more sensible. So whether that £11.39 will just be £11.99 when it comes to it, we shall see. That could be one to keep an eye on. I need to send them a mail trying to blag it, I think.
The developer of Another World, Eric Chahi, is building a new studio. There's not a lot of detail in the link. In fact, there's only a couple of lines. Of course, he's French. They will be based in Montpellier. And the studio aims to create, in quotes, indie games with a poetic touch. And that's about all we know.
Yeah, I saw that. Talk about a brief. Okay.
See, that's another one, because it's been in the news a bit the last few weeks, because he's, I think, probably quite close to releasing, or was it that they just announced it perhaps? He's got a game that's coming out, which is for PSVR. Which is kind of a bit of a ecosystem simulator in VR. Probably nothing too similar to Goddess. I think it was Goddess that was his last one, wasn't it? That was more of a populous puzzle. I think there was puzzle elements of like your sort of terrain manipulation and things like that with that. This seems more of a, I don't know, almost Viva Pinata-y sort of, ecosystem animal breeding and habitat development sort of thing, it looks like. But thinking back, his actual, he comes out and he's often, there's now and again he'll be at E3 on a stage and he'll be like, yeah, I've got this game that we're developing, we're going to look to come out. And he's actually only really released like Another World and Goddess, and I think they're the only actual 2 games that he's done in the last 30 years or something. So hopefully he can get some more of these games actually out and do something interesting.
Well, I got one here from Mike James, and then this is kind of 2 back-to-back here I was going to hit. Monolith Soft is staffing for a new Legend of Zelda project. The Xenoblade developer previously contributed to the Breath of the Wild. Okay, great. This is good. So they're starting it now. Another year at least till it releases. So the next Zelda will be, 2020? Okay, I guess. But at least something's on the way. That's good to hear because they need it.
Just before you hit the next one, Retro Hamer in chat says the Switch just beat N64 sales. I'm surprised it hadn't already.
Well, the N64 was shit, so I mean, it's not hard. Oh, it's funny. I got a good friend of mine who is a casual gamer, and his fiance is very much a casual gamer as well. And but she's one of those girls, like, she has very fond memories. Like, I remember sitting in front of my, N64, playing games, whatever. And I explained to them what a multi-cart was. And it was like, such a thing exists? Okay. So they're jumping right into that one. Got one here from James Eastham. And RF Warrior, long time listener, friend of the show. And he sent in here, congratulations on the 10 big ones, boys. I'm a bit behind on the podcast, so I missed getting this in earlier. No worries. Glad you're here. I've really been enjoying the show for years and really appreciate the work you put into it. Why, thank you. Here are James Eastham's RF Warriors top 10 memorable moments. Mike, can I get the countdown from number 10 to number 1? Is that available?
It is available. It's available.
I'll wait a moment for that. It's worth it.
Right now.
Number 10.
Surf Dogs. I fucking love... You know what? I've said this before. I'm going to say it again. Say what you will. I was pissed. You were pissed. SoCal was a piece of human garbage. But that was good fucking
awkward
radio.
In live chat.
That was good radio.
Number 9.
I stand behind that.
Number 9.
SoCal's pinball idea where a metal ball picks up metal filings. I still have no idea what he was talking about. That's okay. He doesn't either.
Number 8.
UK Mike calling up hookers in Vegas. That
Number
was
7.
pretty good.
Number 7.
The time Scott vomited outside Hofbräu House.
I remember that.
That was pretty funny because remember James drank the boot,
Yeah.
SoCal had quite a bit, and we all basically drank whatever Hofbräu House had on hand. And I walk out, I'm like, whoa, this isn't going well. Woo! Right? All right, let's go, boys, back to the fucking game. And James like, dude, are you all right? I'm like, fuck yeah, let's get a beer. All right.
Number 6.
James on James.
Yeah.
You know what? That was some good stuff. Not only were they funny, not only was it really compelling, it left, I think, a fitting legacy to Neil James. So I'm pretty happy we did that.
Yeah.
Number 5.
The story of Mike's arm getting broken. I never ever get tired of that.
Number 4.
A surprise. Sans a belt pants. I guess that's one of those things that, we do, and it's a moment in time. Yeah, I'm glad you made it.
Number 3.
Scott spending 10 episodes building a robot to deliver beer, then never heard about it again. Well, because I got my beer. Now, I'll tell you what I'm working on right now. You guys know what a Mazda Miata is, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. MX-5 in the UK.
Yeah.
All right. So, yeah, they call it the MX-5 Miata here because it needs multiple names. That's a car no man should really be seen driving. It's a secretary chick car, right? But here in the U.S., it is super accessible and super popular to drop in the Corvette or any other LS V8, right? It literally bolts in. There are companies that make the subframes. If you give me a hot 3-day weekend and nothing crazy happens, I can do the full engine swap in 3 days, right? So then you're talking about, 600 horsepower in a Mazda Miata. So I got the engine, I got the conversion kit. I'm just searching right now because I want to go out and spend like $7,000 on a 2006 Miata that has a perfectly good engine transfer. I'm looking for something that has a blown engine that someone's hoping to get $2,000 for. So I'm trying to be a little patient on this, But soon I will have my V8 powered Miata. So there's that. I'm sorry, continue.
Number 2.
The ridiculous argument that Scott made about Space Invader ship being a mascot. It is. I mean, if you hang that, if you walk into, let's say you walk into a strip mall or high street or any row of shops, US, UK, doesn't matter, and you see that Space Invader character on a sign hanging out, you know you're walking in there because you know it's an arcade, right? Or a video game shop. It's got to be. It is the emblem of gaming.
Number 1.
Fanless heat management of the Coleco Chameleon. It stays cool without a fan. Which, by the way, Atari has picked up for the Atari box.
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah, the whole campaign, the whole ethos, the whole campaign. It's a rebirth.
I was talking about this with somebody the other day, and I was explaining, the book, and I was explaining the backstory, and they were absolutely incredulous. They're like, he thought this would work, and I said, yeah, but the part that gets me is that no matter how obviously fraudulent this story was, it was allowed to run its course. At no point, other than like me and UK Mike and Stop Dropping Retro and Pat and Ian and a few others, maybe a dozen of us, were like, this whole thing is fake. It never happened. There is no project. It's a scam. Everybody else ran through the narrative, and as comically ridiculous as it was, the vast majority of people fell for it. And I was explaining to them that, that to me is not so much that Mike had the audacity to pull this scam, which he did. I mean, he pulled a scam, and that people went along with it as willing partners. That fascinates me to this day.
Yep.
Just close this here with a remark. Shout out to the friends I've made through your work. You guys, Bite Night, Nermix, others, let's finish that board game. Need anything, let me know. James, R4, thank you very much for the kind words and thinking of us.
And well done for catching up a bit. Let's face it, there is a bit to catch up on. So I sent one there, but Random Dave might know more about it than I do. The charity speedrunning event Summer Games Done Quick reveals their 2019 games list.
I've not actually looked at the lineup yet, which I get their blasts and usually check it out and see which days I want to maybe make a bit more of a special effort to try and be available. But usually I just end up sticking it on 24/7 in the background, and depending on what I'm doing at the time, whether I'm working or eating my breakfast or whatever, I keep an eye on it. And I was hoping to get in touch with their press people to get a bit of a heads up on any records that get broken that I might miss because I'm not watching it intently all fucking 7 days, 24/7. But I've not really heard from them. I don't know whether they do actually go as far as thinking, right, every year we should put out a little, pay attention to when a really records get broken, and then we can put out press releases for them. And surely that's a good way of getting publicity to the cause. Not that they're short on viewers or donations these days. Very successful little fundraising event. It's a bit of controversy behind the scenes on where the money gets used at times, but if there still is a certain degree of money getting to some charities, whether they're the charities you want getting money, is it's the same with anything. I guess any sort of fundraising, it might not be for what you want, so at that point, don't worry about it, don't donate. Not a problem, is it? But always good for watching fun retro games get broken apart, and they'll tell you all about why they're broken, and very interesting. Watching people do what used to be tool assisted only glitches, but physically doing them themselves, people playing through games with their feet, all sorts of cool stuff. So yeah, well worth tuning into, even if you just put it on as background entertainment. I've got the next one, which was also sent in by Chris Leithco around the same time, and a few days later, Mike James. Surprised not more people sent it in, but it was Sega. We knew they were releasing a Genesis Mini, but at the time, originally, it was just going to be another At Games dogshit console, the same that they've been doing for years, really, which are notoriously bad for their emulation, especially their sound quality. But this release, they came out and they said, this bit of news, they gave us a date, which is September the 19th. And pre-orders went live about a week after this was announced, I think, maybe, along with another update that I'll come to. But they also announced that they've handed it over to M2, which is, if anyone that doesn't know, they are the people who did Nintendo trusted with a lot of the virtual console stuff. Sega then started using them for the 3DS arcade conversions like Outrun and Afterburner. Sega had used them in the past in a bit in the Sega Ages emulation collections, and they are sort of well known for being really authentic, accurate emulation specialists. Also, we'll throw in a load of sort of bonus stuff. So I used to have the Treasure Box collection, which had Gunstar Heroes on it, but it would output in progressive scan. You could play like mix and match frame rate, hertz, refresh rates, and languages. But they also put in things like the Game Gear ROM, and then like a translated Game Gear ROM, loads of other information and things like that. So they really will go the extra mile. So hopefully this will be a decent Genesis thing. And then the games list it announced 10 games at the time, which was Altered Beast, which is crap, Castlevania Bloodlines, which is an interesting one to end up on there, Comic Zone, Dr. Robotnik's Mean Bean Machine, Echo the Dolphin, Gunstar Heroes. So these are all things that you'd usually find in Sega compilations. Shining Force, of course, Sonic the Hedgehog, Space Harrier 2, Toe Jam and Earl, which again I thought might not appear, but then they've just re-released the fourth one, so maybe they wanted to do some sort of co-marketing. But they announced recently, when they put the pre-orders up, they announced another 10 games. So the Japanese and the American lineups are slightly different, but this is the US. The rest of the US list so far is Earthworm Jim, which is interesting. Sonic the Hedgehog 2, Castle of Illusion, World of Illusion, Contra Hardcore, which is an interesting one to put on there. Again, similar to sort of Castlevania Bloodlines, it's quite expensive to pick up for a Western version, usually on cartridge. Very technically good games, quite well regarded. Streets of Rage 2, Thunder Force 3, Super Fantasy Zone, Shinobi 3, and Landstalker. Now, one last interesting point about this is I think they're USB ports on them, so that's not so much of a problem. I suppose even if they were DB9s, again, this would not be a problem particularly, but the Western versions only come with a 3-button pad, and the Japanese versions come with a 6-button pad. Now, that originally seemed like on their list, initial list, that it was kind of, they were steering away from games that were sort of 6-button worthy in the US list, and the Japanese stuff, obviously that didn't matter, they could have stuff there. But with Contra Hardcore, I mean, it's playable for sure with a 3-button pad, but it's probably a little bit friendlier to play with a 6-button, things like that. So it's, maybe a bit odd that they're not putting the 6-button pad on there. I can't imagine it costs any more to make the 6-button pads than it does the 3-button pads.
I would prefer the 3, actually. I think
I do in terms of how it feels in the hand and the buttons. Like for me, that was always the way I'd played most games anyway. I didn't seem to miss out.
I'm excited for this. I mean, look, the PlayStation 1, I'm just kind of indifferent about. I kind of want to have one just so I can put it up on a shelf and have it with all the other ones. But like I saw, they were getting marked down here and there. I was walking through, I think, Target, and they still wanted like $50. I'm like, now wait till it's 20 or whatever. I just don't care. I couldn't bring myself to pay $50 for it. This one, pre-order at $80, no concerns. I love what I'm looking at here. Even if the software is shit, just as a pie case, this is beautiful. It's a good looking box. They sort of did an interesting crossover of that sort of grid that Sega put on everything for the Master System, and the Genesis logo and everything. The box just looks great. The logo, the picture of the console, the actual console looks really good. They have, the on-off, the volume slider, where they put the USBs in place of the DB9s. That looks pretty good. I think it looks great. And the game list so far, I mean, they better get Golden Axe in there, But I'm certain this will be hackable within days to weeks. Somebody will have, the program you download, and you hook up a USB cable, and you load up the entire Sega Genesis library, or stick in a USB drive with them on there. So this will happen, and okay. So I got a Genesis with the multi-cart. I got the Raspberry Pi with Retrocade with all the Genesis games. I got 20 ways to play this. But like I said, release a quality product, and people will buy it even if they already have another way to play it. Release a shit product, they're not going to buy it just because you tried to close off options. I absolutely am down for one of these, and I even if I just open it up, check it out, load some games, but still keep playing on other platforms, I'm happy. I think this is how you do this. This looks good.
So speaking of mini systems and hearing from long-time listeners, Petros Melekos says, just taking the opportunity to say hi to everyone, also to let you know how the PS1 Mini is doing on the continent, and more specifically in Belgium. The initial price was €99, but was quickly available for 70 or even 60 as special offer. By late January, it was down to €40 from at least one major retailer, and he picked one up then. As of March 2019, MediaMarkt and others were pushing it for just €30. How low can it go, he says. Cheers, Petros, who is, of course, Chalk Salad in the forums.
Yeah, I was in, where was I at? I was in Saturn in Darmstadt, and they had it for like stupid cheap.
Yeah. But coming to a bargain bin near you soon. So here's one.
But the problem is,
I was muted.
A couple of those things I thought that they don't work in the U.S. Like, I know HDMI is HDMI, but like I picked up the Commodore 64 from overseas, accepting it might not work, and it didn't work. I think it's more of a 50, 60 hertz thing that it just doesn't want to run at that clock frequency. Mm-hmm. So I've already heard from a couple people, they tried the German version, and it didn't work in the U.S., so okay, fine. I will just wait till it shows up in the U.S. and is stupid cheap. Cheap enough to make me buy a PS1 Mini.
I'm sure I've seen people saying in the US that I've seen pictures, Reddit or maybe Twitter with them sort of being $20 here and there. Certainly $30-40.
I have yet to see it, but when I see it, I'll buy one.
Yeah, I mean in the UK it dropped to maybe 50 quid or something, but it never seemed to drop any further, which was, I'd want it, even with it being hacked wide open and being actually, turned into the device that it should have been. It never seemed to quite get as cheap as in any other country. I don't know whether there was still a bit of a market for it. It's down to £41.49 on Amazon at the moment. Maybe if it was 20-30 quid, I might think about it. But
yeah, there's just something about it that's kind of uninspiring. It just doesn't make you like the Genesis. $80, done. Here, take my money, right? the PlayStation one, it's kind of like, yeah, it's just kind of plain and kind of uninteresting. I don't know.
I guess the problem for me as well is, so I've got a PlayStation TV, like Vita TV, and all of the official games that are on the PS Classic, you can buy and download off the PlayStation Store. A few of which I already own through either buying them or through, PlayStation Plus giveaways. I also have a bunch of other games off the store that I can download and play on that. The performance is better on it. The console itself is smaller, and it will use DualShock 3 pads wirelessly with the dual analog and vibration, which is missing from the standard pads that you get with the PlayStation Classic. So, like, when you think about the PS Vita TV, was in the UK they were chucking them out for like 20 quid at one point. If you got one of them, like that is a far better way to play PlayStation 1 games on an HD TV, even after modding a PlayStation Classic. So I guess already owning that, it's a bit of a moot point bothering to buy a PlayStation Classic, especially as you can mod the Vita stuff now as well and add whatever games you want on. So
yeah.
One
here I wanted to show you the video of, and this is a Lego engine that someone's built, a V12. The video
watching it right this second
is on screen right now, and they take this thing up to 40,000 RPM. It's crazy. I've not got the sound on the stream, obviously, but when you hear the thing whirring away, it's amazing.
Oh, you know what? I'm gonna. Oh, that's great. I'll go to the part where it comes apart.
Yeah.
Look, I'm guilty of this exact same thing. There's something about like making display plastic engines that aren't supposed to run to at least some extent. You ever seen the Visible V8?
No.
All right, so this kit's been around literally since the 1950s, right? It just evolved. Like they changed the intake manifold to look a little more modern, whatever. I also got one out of England in the 80s. It was of the Cosworth turbo 4-cylinder out of the Cosworth Escort, And the basic idea being, you've got, like with a Visible V8, it's a clear engine block, clear oil pan. Then you have the crankshaft, the con rods, the pistons, all that. There is a camshaft. The camshaft pushes the push rods, the valves open and close, and the spark plugs are replaced with little lights, right? And the versions they made from the 50s up to about the 90s had an electric motor where the starter motor would be. So you hit a button, it would turn, and it would, flash the lights and everything. And then later on, they got rid of all that to make it cheap. And they just put in a hand crank, which is dumb because, you want to turn on the motor and watch it run, right? So they told you, put in a few drops of mineral oil, right, to lubricate it. Mm-hmm. And that would work fine. You could run it forever, pretty much powered by electric motor. But, of course, what are you going to do? You want to see some combustion in that thing. Right. So, the manifolds had no passages. There was no path for air. So, the valve train did work, but we drilled holes, for the exhaust and intake so that the valves would actually function, and, drilled holes so that the manifold could actually pass air. And we would do stuff like put in, RC glow plugs or, actually up the voltage to 4 or 5 9-volt batteries so that it would actually spark, with the, where the bulbs were, just put in 2 wires. And, used all sorts of stuff, hairspray, spraying. Hairspray is really, really flammable, Spray that down to the intake manifold. And it was just a quest to make something that shouldn't run, and I was good with that.
Yeah. So, breaking news on the podcast. Again, I'm going to flip over to the feed. We're doing it all wrong. The Secret Cabal Gaming Podcast 2019 Tabletop Media Bonanza. So these people have a podcast, and to do their podcast for the next year, they were looking for £30,000 on Kickstarter. And it's got funded. They've got 50. So just scrolling down this.
New Kickstarter announcement.
Yeah.
Mike We got to do one of these.
We have. $40,000 means the campaign's funded and the cabal continues, but at a limited capacity. What? $80,000 we're fully funded, full steam ahead. $80,000 a year to do a fucking podcast. What the fuck is going on?
We're
and it's
definitely
funded.
doing this wrong, aren't we?
They're funded. They've got 50,000 fucking pounds. Jesus
If you don't all pay
Christ.
us 20 grand a year, then I'm just going to wave my dick around on screen for every live news.
We had someone
You
who
have to
did that.
Stare at it.
Look what happened to him.
Speaking of other podcasters and stuff, the latest Retro Gamer, which I'm hopefully going to hold up to my camera, they interviewed the Retro Hour, and the fucking chumps are in like this fancy studio now. Whether this is just they've rented this just for this photo shoot or what, like you end up with people who do like what's it called? Come Dine With Me, and they just rent some other house that's fancy to have everyone round rather than their shithole house. You know, it just smack of that. It's like, yeah, we've just gone into like the local BBC radio and just had some photos in there. They don't need all this shit for doing a podcast, surely. Anyway.
This podcast is run on donations and brass fucking buttons, and these jokers can't even do a full capacity podcast for less than 80 grand. What
We have brass
fuck
buttons.
is going on? I've got a couple in a tin downstairs. Jesus Christ. What is the world coming to?
Well,
I've got a
apparently
brass
it's coming to
adapter
us
for my
doing a
mic
fucking
stands.
Kickstarter for 80 grand. 80 grand is what it comes to.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm serious. I'm dead fucking serious. All right. When we're in the UK, since the majority of us will be there, middle of June, we're doing this. We're gonna have Brandon break out his camera, put it on a tripod, hit record, run around the other side. We're doing our pitch video, and Mike, don't shave for about a week and a half, okay?
Okay.
Because what we're gonna have to do, okay,
Which I haven't done at the
is
moment. Which I haven't done at the moment. I might shave between now
So
and
what
then.
we're gonna have to do is dishevel your hair, right? And have you picking through the garbage bin to find like bits of tape or a 1 gig SD card and a little mixer.
Car keys.
Car keys, yeah.
Yeah. Oh look, they're right here the whole time.
Sorry.
So all that. We'll film you like I said, picking through the trash, trying to find, scrounge up enough just to put together another podcast. We'll do the whole Kickstarter video, right? Scott is in the UK, can't afford to get back to America. We'll do the whole angle, and then we'll ask for the 80 grand. So,
Jesus. Well, I don't know about being all over for podcasts, but it's all over for pre-owned games, or is it? Second-hand game sales remain significant, but the recent decline is by no means temporary. According to Game and CEX and GameStop, the used game market is on the decline. I'm not surprised because of the vast uptake of Steam, although it's been around years, and the exorbitant prices they charge, little less than a brand new game. So I think they're just getting what's been coming to them for a while, if I'm honest. And GameStop posted a $673 million full-year loss. The challenges facing our pre-owned video game business and the need to change its business model are blamed for that loss. Yes. We did warn you.
So, when GameKeep get in the UK, which is, the equivalent, well, did they, there's a weird lineage between Electronics Boutique and Game and GameStop and their presence in the UK, but GameKeep going into administration and everyone's because your shops are shit, your pre-owned games are far too expensive, they're more expensive than the new games half the time, what the fuck are you doing? And then the administrators come in, get some of the creditors off their back and things like that, and revamp the business model, which seems to be the same shit business model. And 6 months later, everyone kind of goes, "Well, they're fucked again. What happened there?" And it's like, well, perhaps this doesn't work, stop doing the same fucking stupid thing.
Yeah.
Oh, we can't compete with the internet. It's like, well, no, not if you're being dicks about it. And so,
a friend of mine who owns a brewery, okay, and he said it, and it's not an original thought, but he we were talking about his business and his decisions to open a business and everything, and how he looks towards the future. And he said he heard it, and he couldn't remember who said it, but it's true that nobody ever went out of business offering a quality product and good customer service. Even if it costs more, there's a market for it, And some people just want the cheapest thing possible. Some people want quality and good customer service. And there's always a market for that, So, yeah, you can go get, Miller Lite for the equivalent of $2 a can. Or you're going to stop in his place. You're going to pay $7, $8 for a pint. And you're going to order a couple of pints. And you're going to be damn pleased with the quality you got. So, this applies here. You've got shit business models that they try and hit you over the head with. Or you could do it right.
Yep, I would agree with that. Breath of the Wild apparently is getting VR support later this month. Anyone up for that?
Noticed that. Mentioned it earlier with when we were talking about the high-powered Switch, and I think it sounds like because they sort of came out and they went, Mario Odyssey is going to get VR support and Breath of the Wild, and they were saying Breath of the Wild is going to be entirely everywhere playable in VR, and Mario Odyssey is going to have specifically designed levels and challenges for that mode. But then it sounds like the Breath of the Wild thing, they're saying, yeah, the intention of it is you're running around the world, you see something cool, so you put your Switch into your cardboard VR things and like switch into VR mode and just look around and go, yeah, that's a cool looking view that's not really going to run very well if I'm not just sort of stood here doing nothing, and then put it down and carry on. Whether you'd actually feasibly be able to play through the entire game, like actually play it in VR, I am skeptical. Basically. One here from me, which came from April Fools, and this was really weird. So we'd been thinking about one of our top 10s, and I'd been thinking about R-Type 2 final, playing about on my PS2 and with some other stuff, and started cracking out R-Type Final, playing through that a bit again. I was having a good time, and then on April the 1st, the day where you don't trust anything on the internet, they came out with the news, IREM, the press release that they were bringing out R-Type Final 2. And the whole point of it was that, R-Type Final was actually called Final, and they followed through with it like the Final Fantasy, but actually meaning Final. It was really the sort of the last R-Type game. IREM carried on a bit, doing the not Day of Disaster, the other one, the earthquake disaster game. But then that all got fucked up when there was the actual big earthquake in Japan, and they had to not release the game and lost a load of money and sort of, took a bit of a hit to the company and sort of went to the shadows. But then 4 days later, reputable news places, which had made the same sort of assumption I had, that this was a bit of a fake April Fool's thing. They all went, they were all like, wait a minute, this is actually real. They sort of talked to people, and the press guys were still like, yeah, we're actually doing this. We're making R-Type Final 2. So I'm quite interested by this. I would imagine it's not a great deal of details. Looks like they're going PlayStation 4 first. I can't imagine it wouldn't come to Switch. Following on from like the Darius, I can't remember what the new Darius game that came out, but that was sort of multi-platform, Vita, PS4, and Switch at least. So yeah, that was something that cropped up as an April Fool's thing, I thought, especially odd being as I just sort of started revisiting the game before it. And yeah, the universe was actually just aligning and telling me that this is coming. Get excited.
So one here from me you can read in your own time. Instagram, in a nutshell. Instagram today. So it's visual. So I won't describe it on an audio podcast, no matter how well funded. You can read it in your own time.
No, look, dude, for 80
Stretch
grand.
goal.
Stretch goal.
For
Stretch
80
goal will
grand,
describe visual
I will fucking
articles.
explain everything.
Whoa. What's my computer doing?
Oh, dear. Links will be in the show notes, of course. I've not been pasting them in the chat because I forgot. I might paste a few of these that are coming up. So Stephen Stuttered sent us one. No doubt he'll be at Revival. Might see him at Play Manchester as well. Don't know. Hi, guys. Just over a couple of months, renamed all 5,000 inlay scans with the publisher details for the ZX Spectrum. So I know he's done loads of scans of magazines, Zap magazine. I think he did the high-res Zap magazine issues. So he's done all the inlays for 5,000 Spectrum games at 600 DPI. And the letter T alone is 10 gigabytes of data. So if you really need to hoard all that data on a hard drive somewhere, you can go and download it from the Internet Archive. All the best, Stephen, a.k.a. Mort. So thank you, Stephen, for that. And thank you for taking the time and effort to do that. You should do a Kickstarter for 80 grand.
Yeah, right.
Got a link I sent in, which is bizarrely, whenever I go to the page, it's starting Steam VR and making everything go a bit wacky on my computer. So what the fuck is going on there? I don't know, because the video's not auto playing, and you'd hope the video wouldn't start it. Why this is triggering Steam VR, I don't know, but this is a story that I saw on, I think it was probably Drudge Report, CNN Business, that video games are now a legitimate high school sport. And of course, we know that esports is a pretty big thing these days in terms of, well, there's a small percentage of very large prize pool. There's a lot of wannabes that probably are just, you never hear about and never making anything. It's barely more than a hobby still. But I interview for interns for every summer. And at the moment, all of the computer science interns that I'm going through the CVs for, they are interested in, they're all doing machine learning and AI as their specialist stuff, but all the universities all have esports teams now in the UK, it seems. Well, certainly Sheffield ones that are, it's a long historied video game developing area. So yeah, they all have esports teams, and all of the people who are applying to us seem to have be on the esports team. Some of them have been a bit weird, where you get the usual suspects of like, oh yeah, I play what's the Blizzard one that now I'm blanking on? Overwatch. People have like Overwatch. We've got a PUBG team. We've got a Fortnite team. But then one of them I had this year was like, yeah, I play in the MLB 19 and the UFC 19 esports team. And it's like, wait, that doesn't. Do they? I'm sure they don't have UK MLB esports teams. Surely, that can't be very, very popular. It's not your traditional RTS or FPS or beat 'em up sort of stuff. Yeah, so that was a bit, or now sort of battle royale is king, I suppose. So yeah, that was a bit weird. But yeah, it's becoming an actual sort of thing and legit thing in schools in America as well now. So college.
But I don't get it. I do think that words matter, and when we talk about things like, oh, it's this sport, I don't like sports. You will never find me running up and down a field chasing a ball with 20 other dudes. I don't give a shit. It holds no fascination for me. Boring as shit. Honestly, I didn't even know until somebody told me my college had a freaking football team. I just don't care. But this isn't a sport. I mean, sports is something physical, played, for competition. This is a game. This is a hobby. And, I think it's a ridiculous term and ridiculously applied, is what it is.
There's a great channel on YouTube that I watch. It's a guy called Jimmy Broadbent, and it is his full-time job, streaming game videos on YouTube. And he plays Assetto Corsa, and among a few other driving games, a bit of Dirt Rally thrown in, I think iRacing as well. And he streams himself taking various cars around the Nordschleife. But also, he's been invited to a couple of real-world racing events as well. But some of the current F1 drivers also race online, have sims at home, and he's been invited to a couple of races with them as well. So Max Verstappen, the Red Bull driver, is an online sim racer, and Lando Norris, the McLaren driver, both in the current F1 championship. He got to race on the same server as those two. Actually overtook Max Verstappen at one point. But check out Jimmy Broadbent on YouTube, particularly his videos going around the Nordschleife in various cars.
There was also the guy this year who they did a head-to-head in during the Race of Champions event, and I can't remember who the pro was now, or the name of the other guy. But basically, they put a pro driver against a pro simulation driver. The simulation driver won and kicked this guy's ass, even though it was pretty much his first time in an actual real racing car.
That is super valid. Look, the F1 time. I mean, think about how expensive F1 car time is, right? It's insanely expensive. The track, the opportunity to be there. You literally have to move a bunch of semi rigs just to let the driver can go do some practice, right? Crazy stuff. And these guys train in sims. So one time when UK Mike and I were in Vegas, we went out to the Ferrari school that I use. And I use them for 3-day courses where you go out and you race for 3 days, And this was just like an afternoon thing. You just go out and you do some laps. And, they've got an instructor there that, gives you some guidance and everything. And UK Mike did better than my time. And in addition to that, he, Kevin, the instructor who I've used before, asked Mike, hey, do you race pro? Are you do you do this? Because
simulator time. Ford C-Max.
Yeah, I know, right? But the simulator time that Mike had logged had given him that much of an edge. Now, that's one of my sort of prods to getting that Ferrari 355 simulator stood up here in the basement, is so I can do some serious practice before track sessions, but totally legit. So got one here of the aforementioned Mike James, World War II code breaking machine reconstructed. So it's again here, World War II code breaking machine reconstructed, and
the Heath Robinson.
They have, yep. And it's interesting. They said, due to the secrecy, he never knew the machine was named after him. If you want to go back and do some fascinating reading, it's on how they built some very early general purpose computers just to run permutations of code to try and break, German code. Just a fantastic piece of hardware. And what's neat now is a lot of this stuff, remained classified into the 60s, because it was still viable technology into the 50s. Then, of course, after the 60s, a lot of it was forgotten about, even if it was declassified. But what's amazing now is there are groups going back and, museum volunteers and other ones getting access to these machines, and they're restoring them to working condition. One particularly wonderful project is on YouTube. The guy's name, his channel is Curious Mark. And they're doing, there's a guy who bought just, shells full of surplus junk from NASA. And some of that included some of the Apollo flight computers. Now, these were, manned mission, but they were authentic original Apollo hardware. And they're going through what it takes to, take a very early computer from the late 60s to mid 60s and get it back in working order. And, all the test and support, equipment they build just to simulate each module and see if it works before they hook it up and apply power and damage, irreplaceable hardware. Hours and hours of wonderful viewing. So, it's neat here in this article getting to see, some of the volunteers that worked on the machine and everything. Just a beautiful piece of history.
Yeah, one of my upcoming trips is going to be down to Bletchley Park. You can go down and look at some of the code-breaking stuff they had down there during the war.
How far is that from your house?
Hour and a half, something like that. Maybe 2 hours tops.
Oh, hell yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm still trying, I'm still trying to sort out with Alex exactly when he's coming, when I'm going. So I'm free from the 6th to the 17th. Mm-hmm. So, it's a good chunk of time,
Yeah.
So I'm like, all right, so I'm thinking about flying into Toulouse, hanging out with him for the weekend, driving down to Cannes, hanging out there for a couple days, driving back, and then he and I fly up to the UK. So it's all a matter of what time he can get off of work, so how early we can get there during the week. If it looks like he's going to have too much trouble getting off of work, I might just fly up before him, and he flies up like Friday and meets us,
Yeah.
So we're still, we're waiting on his procrastinating French ass. But once, he pulls the cork out of his champagne bottle and gets going, we'll come up with a plan. But that will be something really cool to see Bletchley Park. Oh my God, Ian chimed in here. It's 20 minutes for me, and I've never been to Bletchley Park. Need to rectify that. Yes, you do.
Yes, you do. You can meet us there.
It's been a long while since I've been. Last was in my A-level physics class. We went, and in the end, we just ended up spending the day winding up. I got a lift with our physics teacher, and she was a physics teacher that we used to lock in the cupboard a lot and do all sorts of mischief in her lessons. She could never control us or do anything, and we spent the whole time getting it. We got a lift, a couple of us a lift with her in her car, and we were sort of rummaging around in a boot, finding loads of things and asking her if she's got all her cocaine hidden in them. And it was always like these really awkward, like, no, of course not, and like weird stuff. And we just spent the entire day harassing her, basically, which rather than doing anything useful, which we probably should have done. But it was cool.
I really wished I had one of those electric razors to turn on, hold against the mic.
Trying to think if I've got anything. No, not in the vicinity.
I've got a vibrator in the next room. I mean,
of course. This is one of my kids. This stutters.
Yeah, knocked all his teeth out with it. There's one here that again is a visual one. For the right price, we will describe it. It's a video that shows the rise and fall of various graphics cards as they've been used on Steam over the last, how long? 15 years. It's got various sliding bars. It's quite mesmerizing just watching the new graphics card shoot up to the top and then slowly fade as something else comes in. You can watch it in your own time. It will be in the show notes, and I'll paste it in chat. There you go.
It is amazing how fast those things evolve and how quickly, like, if you want the greatest thing from 1 year ago, how it's now 1/2 the price at best.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And so Microsoft have got a really cool wall where they've got, like, the history of DirectX. And they've got all these old graphics cards that, this was the first graphics card to introduce this technology that we supported. This was the first one to do this. And they've just basically just made this big timeline along this wall and just nailed all these old graphics cards to it. And there's videos of them taking people along it. And it's just like, oh man, I remember all of these, like, from right back till then. It just really sort of makes you think how, it has been such a rapidly advancing thing. And we're not we're in a reasonable real-time ray tracing place. It's not the best yet, but it's very expensive to get decent performance out of it. But you can see in 10 years' time, like a really powerful real-time ray tracing card will, that'll just be your $150, like bottom end, and the top, the new top
Well,
end.
the PS5 is going to
Same.
have ray tracing. But
Well,
my
maybe.
concern is, well, I hear your, and I agree. My concern is it's going to be like polygons before polygons should have been there.
Yeah, because it's not clear yet on whether that's like a full hardware solution like Nvidia have, which is the reason why those cards are expensive, because they've not just got the usual big chunk of silicon for the GPU, the normal compute shaders. They've got then these extra cores that they've slapped on that do specifically the real-time accelerated ray tracing and stuff. But then shortly before the Google Stadia announcement, I think it was Unreal or CryEngine did a demo of not quite as advanced stuff as Nvidia's real-time stuff, but some ray tracing in real time in their engine running on an AMD Vega 56, which isn't even their top of the range card, but showing that you can do some effects on it. What then came a few weeks later with the Google Stadia reveal was that the Google Stadia GPU is based on the Vega 56 as well. So there was a lot of then talk of like, oh, was this engine just coming up to spec to Google to be able to use it? But then by the time the PS5, the silicon's going to be fairly finalized now already, but there's you can reasonably assume that the Vega graphics core, they'll be pairing it with that, and it's getting to the point that some engines will do some amount of some ray tracing operations. It will support it in hardware to a degree. What was interesting was that Mark Cerny was also saying how that would be beneficial for maybe not so much using it for graphics, but it would be really nice to use it for audio as well, because you're able to use the same firing of rays and basically follow the path that the sound would take from every object to where the listener is, and actually, rather than just faking all of these audio effects of ambient occlusion and everything and echoes, you'll just get it all. You just need to set up, this is where the emitter is in the game world, this is where the hearing is, and the ray tracing will take care of basically giving you all of those effects for free, but accurately as well. Be interesting what they do end up doing at an affordable level for the consoles. You can be sure that Microsoft will be following in something similar.
We use a similar process for thermal modeling, right? Like, let's say we've got heating on a spacecraft component, right? And we're really concerned about, all right, what's the origin? Because, you've only got so many thermistors that measure temperature at different physical points. And sometimes you go in there and you do simulations, right? You take what's called a hot stick, which is basically a real gnarly heater on the end of a rod, and you set it where you believe, like where the component is that you believe is generating the heat. And then you heat it up and you see how the neighboring ones respond, right? That's a physical test. Well, that physical test, is, you're talking about very rare and very expensive hardware that, when the original satellite was built, let's say you built 20 extras, right? Usually you wouldn't. You'd have like 10 extras, right? So if you're going to do destructive testing, which are two of my favorite words in the world, but you're going to do destructive testing and heat this thing up, you're going to burn away epoxy, you're going to, damage the circuit boards, you're going to change everything, on the circuit board. So before you do a test, you want to be very certain what you're doing is sound, right? So we do some pretty similar, modeling of, okay, the point of radiant heat, the reception points, all that. And I know it takes, using, pretty decent sun hardware, it takes sometimes hours to model simple images. So that's a fantastic amount of on-the-fly computing power.
We got one here, which is another visual one that would be happily described, given the right level of funding. Physics-defying video game boobs.
I was thinking of
Run us some
suggesting
money,
you put this page on the stream to display it when I went to click into it and do it. But then, why give the people this content when we can make them pay for it?
We can make them pay for it. What we'll do instead on the stream is show them a boring one of hidden NES levels that an 8-year-old couldn't find. First one is on screen there. Level 1 in Super Mario Brothers, The Warp. The Minus World in Legend of Zelda. The second level warp in Super Mario Brothers. The second quest in Castlevania. Not so much a hidden level, but hard to find, because it's hard to even get there. The bonus stage in DuckTales. The level warp in Super Mario Brothers 2. I didn't know about that one. The secret room in Bubble Bobble. Another level warp in another Super Mario Brothers 2. Another level warp in another Super Mario Brothers 2. The hidden world in Metroid. The bypass the level 2 boss in Double Dragon. The best ending in Castlevania 2 Simon's Quest. The cutscene in Dr. Mario. The hidden room in Solomon's Key. The warp whistle 1 in Super Mario Bros. 3. Seems to be a lot of warps in Mario games. The secret passage to level 5 in Gauntlet. The locked door in Col. Dragon Warrior. Another warp whistle in another Mario Brothers, and yet another. And follow that up with another SNES one from another Nintendo one, from Chris Lethco, which is footage for the cancelled SNES game Atmosphere has appeared online. Atmosphere, also known as Nightmare, was the most popular of the VHS tape board games. Footage recently appeared online for a SNES prototype version.
Did anyone else play that, or were you guys a bit too old, or did kids play it, or?
I haven't played it, I must admit. No.
Came out when we were about the right age for it, and obviously it had limited replay value to a degree, because obviously you've got this VHS playing while you're playing through the board game, and other than the youngest person was always my mate's sister. So the youngest person always got picked on at a certain point, and you knew things were coming, and you knew around half an hour, suddenly after it's been quiet for 5 minutes, the guy's going to suddenly, jump out and shout really loud at you, and scare the shit out of everyone. But there was a couple of expansion packs as well, which we found at one of our mates' houses it's probably when we were about 18-ish. And sort of old enough to know better, but at the time we were playing marathon games of UN Squadron and things like that, and Super Mario World still, going back to the SNES, even though this was the days of it wasn't quite PS2. I don't think it must have been Dreamcast-y just coming out, but yeah, we found there was a Baron Samedi one, which I seem to remember was really good. That. Had some phrases on it that became sort of catchphrases between us for a long time, and some of them were surprisingly entertaining. It's a shame. Obviously they are going to be limited in replay value, so it's quite an expensive endeavour having to buy a whole new VHS tape every time. But you got little knickknacks and extra counters and action cards and things to go with the game. And it all sort of used the same original board. They're quite interesting. I wonder if there must be some folks who meet up and will play them, at expos and meetups and stuff. So maybe if no one's played them, maybe we can get hold of some DVDs and some photocopies of the boards and stuff, and maybe do a drunken mule. We can all sit and play some sort of drunken atmosphere or something sometime.
I'm down.
Mm-hmm.
Got one here from Mark Kaminsky. And he says, "What the hell is going on here? I just had a stroke watching this." So this is something that we passed around these circles. And it is Ely of Pico Interactive talking about Retro Magazine, his news store, and I'm not sure what else. You know, I really in the past, okay, prior to the Coleco Chameleon scandal and up through it, I had a fairly okay opinion of Ely. I mean, and I think what he was doing at the time was legit. I mean, it's interesting. You know, you take unfinished or rare games and, you know, get them out there to the public. Some of them, you know, have a collector following I don't quite understand, like Super Noah's Ark, whatever. But I get that following is there. I mean, I have my own Holy Grails. I mean, how many people are there out there hunting for version 2 software of 355 Challenge so they can play Fiorano? It's probably under 10. So I get it. And I don't think that Ely did anything unethical during his handling of the Chameleon debacle. There are some points that, excuse me, he knew more than he let on. And I think he could have sounded the alarm a little more aggressively. But, you know, even though we were tiptoeing in some cases because, you know, we'd ask ourselves every now and then, okay, we know that we're right. We know that this is a scam. But just how much can we get away with before it becomes actionable? You know, like if we, you know, hijack a Twitter and, you know, release product info, even though the product is a scam, could we have legal trouble or issues doing that, right? So we were on the razor's edge of what we could get away with in trying to shut down this scam, which is really, it's really fucked up when you think about the legal system that you have to be careful in trying to expose a scam, you know. So, you know, everybody had their own limits, and I respect Ely's in that regard. Where I lost all respect for Ely is when he went and gave SoCal Mike money. And, you know, one, he facilitated SoCal Mike by rewarding his scam by giving him money. And you look at, like, with, you know, Mark, helped Mike defraud Mark by taking money that was owed to Mark and letting Mike, you know, shuffle the deck so that he ends up paying less money to the people he obligated by inverting the values. It's better that Mike received nothing than they receive a fraction of what they were owed. So that was, I think, wrong that he gave Mike money. And I was disappointed at that because you're helping, you're letting a scammer profit from his scam. But I have to say, I've been fully rewarded in watching an idiot and his money parting ways. What he has gotten, this Retro Magazine, was a dumpster fire. And, you know, like I told Ely, I said, you know, a dumpster fire under new management is still an idiot standing next to a box of burning trash. And it has gone, he has taken Retro to new depths that I almost couldn't have imagined. So even though SoCal's scam touch is long since gone from Retro, it is absolutely going to Idiot Town, and I am delighting in watching this. And if you haven't seen the video of him trying to pitch this thing, go to our show notes, give it a click, and be ready to behold some serious awkwardness.
It's just a man rambling in his kitchen. Yeah, it's not a good product. I had reservations about it in its original form, and it's not a great product at all. And he's trying to build an empire where there isn't, I don't think, an empire to be built. Where have we heard that before? It's just, I don't know.
Worse.
How is he not
Instead
broke?
of at least picking out a nice patch of ground and preparing a foundation, he literally found a crumbling shack sinking into the swamp and started trying to fix it up.
Yeah. I mean, he spent 10 grand on this fucking URL and, you know, a container full of unsold magazines. And I don't know how the guy is not broke. I really don't. He must literally have a money tree. Because I don't know how much money there is in, you know, finished off SNES games and Mega Drive
selling
games.
Bible adventures.
Yeah, I don't know how much money there is in that, but it obviously funds spending 10 grand on a URL.
A database of customers.
A database of angry email
from.
recipients. Yeah. People who...
I mean, there's dumb, and then there's exceptionally dumb.
Yeah, and that is exceptionally dumb. Something that isn't, though, is yet another way to give your Dreamcast a digital video upgrade with DC HDMI, standing for Dreamcast HDMI. The Sega Dreamcast, now over 20 years old, represents an era of unprecedented creativity with Sega. So this is an internal modification. It's the first and only fully digital solution for Dreamcast video output. Comes with it overcomes some limitations typically encountered with the other solutions, while offering the sharpest possible video output from your Dreamcast console. Most of the mod is internal in nature, with the only external difference coming down to the inclusion of a mini HDMI output on the rear of the console. It's entirely non-invasive to the standard operation of the Dreamcast, meaning you can run the analog video output in parallel with this, as you can with the VGA one as well. So this is taking your Dreamcast to HDMI.
Yeah, so if anyone wants the quick rundown on that and a comparison of various different output solutions for the Dreamcast, the sister site to Eurogamer, who wrote that article, Digital Foundry, they've got a very good video that they put up on the Digital Foundry YouTube page. So that's worth a watch if you're interested in the Dreamcast and HDMI output.
So one here from me is another one you can enjoy at your leisure. Again, it's visual. Again, I'll talk about it for 80 grand. And it's a guy who makes artwork, which incorporates pinball artwork, pinball plastics, playfields, etc. And he incorporates them into some classic and some not so classic pictures. No doubt you can buy them from a shop somewhere.
I was just looking through those. So this will be on display April 26th through June 16th in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. So it's at the Art Smiths of Pittsburgh Arts and Cultural Center, 1635 McFarland Road, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, USA. So if you're in the area, I think that'd be an interesting thing to stop through and have a look. So I look forward to it. So got one here, Mr. Mike James. And it says Showtime's Halo TV has cast its Master Chief. All right, let's see.
Is this your Colombian brother who's in this?
Pablo, yeah.
Pablo Schreiber.
I didn't know there was a Halo
this
show
guy was
coming.
Mendez? Oh, okay, this might be good. It says here, Schreiber currently portrays Leprechaun Mad Sweetie in Amazon's television adaptation of Neil Gaiman's America's Gods, who starred as prison guard Pornstache Mendez in Netflix Orange is the New Black. I liked Orange is the New Black. And Mendez was a funny character, Pornstache. I tell you, if you haven't watched Orange is the New Black, watch it. It's a fantastic show. But, freaking Mendez, this guy's funny. So I'm curious. I mean, we'll see where it goes. It could be really bad or it could be pretty good. So I will reserve judgment until it comes on.
You know what? How we usually find video game adaptations. Generally, they're don't get your hopes up too high. Is the way that goes, isn't it?
I think so. Yeah.
Now it could be. I mean, all right. You look at like good space-based sci-fi, like the Star Wars movies and all that. I would say Halo has the same. What's that?
I thought you said good sci-fi space movies.
I like
Star Wars.
But Aliens, any of the good spacefaring franchises, I think Halo has the same storyline strength, it could be well done if properly funded. You try and do it anything less than premium funding, it's not going to be good. Not going to do it.
Like a podcast.
So, got another one here from Mike James. Something we hit on earlier, and here's the story. Sony surprise PlayStation 5 tech reveal. Now I think this console will be one that I pre-order, so there's no, BS or waiting. I'm optimistic about this thing. It says here, Sony has revealed the first specs for what system architect Mark Cerny refers to as a next-gen console. How original. Yeah, of course it is. In a fascinating interview piece for Wired, it confirms the key technologies in place for the hardware. The exciting news that solid-state storage will take center stage in the new machine. Of course, solid-state drives, much faster. It's time to go to them, and I think certainly ideal for a video game console. Perhaps best of all, the fact that Sony PlayStation will feature backwards compatibility with the current market leader PS4. Okay, that's good. Will it be called PlayStation 5? Sony isn't saying, but it seems like an obvious choice. I hope they do. I hope they don't go back and call it the PlayStation 1 or PlayStation 1995 or some asinine thing just to confuse the shit out of everybody.
Infinity plus one.
Yeah.
Just in case anyone isn't aware, listeners, Mark Cerny, who is in charge of technical stuff at Sony now, developed the PlayStation 4 into what it was, which delighted developers after the sale, and to a degree the graphic synthesizer and emotion engine in the PS2. He, of course, designed Marble Madness when he was 18 and coded, I guess, as well, not just designed. So he's got a bit of a history.
Yeah, I'm optimistic. I will certainly have one pre-ordered.
Backers have pledged over $1 billion in total to games on Kickstarter, which is a huge amount of money for probably a huge amount of games. But that's a hell of a lot of money.
But probably a huge amount haven't come out yet.
Yeah, I would imagine so. I would imagine there's a fair percentage of that gone straight down the Swanee. I wonder if it includes consoles as well. Tomb Raider film, the sequel. They've hired a writer. I've not watched the first one yet. I've got it queued up somewhere, but haven't got around to watching it yet. This was the more recent one, not the Angelina Jolie ones, by the way.
Did I end up watching that? I think I watched because it ended up on Netflix, and I think we weren't really. Alan Bull was doing something else, and I didn't really want to watch anything, but didn't really want to not do anything else. And I think I just stuck it on. I was just like, this will be garbage. I'll stick this on, and I think I seem to remember it being actually surprisingly good, and certainly better than the second of the Angelina Jolie ones. If I'm thinking of the right film, I was actually quite surprised how they actually handled some various parts of it. I'd say it's probably worth a watch.
I have to draw our attention.
No guarantees if that goes wrong.
I have to draw our attention over a remarkable exchange in chat, and we don't talk about this often enough. This is why you should find out when the live news is. We announce it, Facebook, Twitter, and our website and all. And get into the live chat and interact with your fellow listeners. The following exchange just occurred. Hi, Per. Or hey, as we say in Sweden. How many Swedes does it take to change a light bulb? 2. And why is that, Michael?
One to change the bulb and one to hold his clothes.
And, Elfton replies, you put the clothes in your IKEA Ivar. Everyone knows that. The need to get naked to change a light bulb.
It's so good. Some of the couple of guys who work out of our office sometimes end up having to go on site in Sweden with some customers, and it's just like the stories where just to make sure you're all right, they pick you up off the plane and then they take you and they give you ply you with loads of schnapps and other alcohol and things, and then just stuff you in like a freezing cold ice bath that's come off a mountain spring, and then put you naked in a sauna, and then throw you back out in the snow and things like this on the first night. And like if you fuck any of that up, if you show unwillingness and too much British stiff upper lipness,
show unwillingness.
Man, the next 3 days are just going to be hell for you, sat in their offices, trying to sort out help them integrate our systems into their systems and stuff. Yeah, I think I'd really enjoy that side of the job. Unfortunately, I don't get to get sent away on fun naked excursions.
So this was another one that hit. There's a gift to go with it as well, sort of. Capcom rolling out their own retro system. And this is a really unusual looking thing. So it's like
real unusual looking.
Yeah, 2-player arcade control panel style thing, and it's in the shape of the Capcom logo. So I don't know.
This is weird. So obviously, they've seen, there's various companies, as we know, doing essentially plug and play systems. They're being quite successul. Capcom have done plug and plays in the past, but then there's also the Pandora, which is doing gangbusters.
This is €230 for 16
But that's the thing, and they've gone, how can we not just bring out some shitty thing, but people will just be like, well, why don't I buy a Pandora with more, like, or albeit illegal games on it? What we'll do is we'll put quality joystick parts in it and all this lot. Yeah, that's how we'll do it. We'll just make $12.
It
And then selling it as this premium thing that no one really wants because it's only got 16 games on it. And then they went, and instead of making it like the Capcom, I think, Capcom owned the IP for like the Vulix arcade cab layout, and they've licensed that to Hori to make big Vulix style arcade sticks. So instead of doing anything sensible like that, they're like, what do we do? I know, we'll just make it look like a big fucking plexiglass Capcom logo. So basically, what I saw a tweet which summed this up, which is the only time the only people that are going to buy this, and the only time you'll ever see this is on thousands of YouTube, YouTube content creators are going to have it on a shelf behind them, and it'll never be played. It'll never, nothing will happen. They'll just sit it on a shelf behind them as a sort of a status symbol, with all their other pop figures and knickknacks.
And it'll be great advertising for Capcom.
Yeah, because it's just a fucking ridiculous idea for the money, like bonkers.
Something else that's bonkers: gaming magazine to launch in June, and that's gaming spelt GAYMING. The LGBTQ plus focused online gaming publication, Gaming
they left
Magazine,
out some letters. That's gonna rile up some
is preparing to launch to the public on June 1st. Now, can LGBTQ people not read normal gaming magazines? Do they have to have their own?
I think they read the same as anybody else. I'm not so sure there's a need.
They can, but if... so what's the guy called? Is it just... I think it's just called The Gay Gamer. He started...
Have a look on your shelf.
A specific blog for stuff, and so there's not a lot of mainstream coverage of, say, visual novel games which like tackle things like boys love and things like that.
There's not enough of them. Did you say there's not enough of them?
Well, no, there's not enough. It's just that there's none at all.
Not for random, there isn't.
Yeah. So I think there is a niche probably. There's going to be a segment of people that will want a magazine that focuses on that, that type of gaming. So
I don't feel the need for a gun-toting ex-military pilot magazine. I'm okay with what's out there.
Isn't there? Various things that cater to this sort of stuff.
I mean, can straight people read it? I don't know. Are you allowed?
Yeah, anyone's allowed to read it.
If you think you have a niche for a magazine and you want to bring print back, and you want to get a magazine out there, God knows we've seen this before. Go for it.
Want to do it as a print magazine maybe isn't the best plan.
Just, don't expect any fawning love or anybody to care. I mean, magazines, I think that time's passed. But, hey, whatever. They want to do it, go for it. Got one here from Mike James. Wacky video game physics to melt your brain. 18 gifts. So, before I get into some of this, well, I'll cover what it covers, and I'll tell you something I observed real quick. So it's just all sorts of things, like a forklift skidding on the tines, NASCAR races where, there's a wreck and every car flies up into the air. Just various little graphical goofs, you can do, like, getting a skid loader to fly along and it's forked sideways. A couple interesting soccer plays, just those funny video game graphics that come about, when the engines behave differently, So the other week, I mentioned to you guys I was replaying Legends of Zelda, the Breath of the Wild. So I'm in there playing, Breath of the Wild, and there's this bit where you have to move this chain and ball and stretch the two balls into two stumps to release one of the Korok seed animals, right? Okay, so I thought, well, I wonder what would happen, like, if you were standing on the other end when you move it with the magnet, and you could actually lift yourself off the ground. I thought that's pretty cool. So I figured, all right, anytime you think you discovered anything clever, go to a YouTube search. You haven't. So I go to YouTube, and there's literally dozens of tutorials on how to build aircraft in Legend of Zelda. And one of my favorite was, and they go into the preparation, sourcing, all this. You go get 2 mine carts, right? You stack them together, and you get one to lift the other with the magnesis and all. So pretty much, you're literally flying through the air, and you can control your flight in a mine cart, So it's pretty neat. Like, they get into, like, the protection from the cold you need and all that. And sure enough, you're just flying around the map. I mean, they didn't intend for you to fly in Zelda other than the little paraglider, But here you are building something and flying it around, just manipulating the physics. It's pretty cool.
I'm just showing the people some of the physics ones. Okay.
One then from me. A Wired story about how the Pacific Pinball Museum keeps old machines alive, and there's an article there and some video, although that says we're sorry something went wrong, so that's probably some GPDR bullshit that's stopping us look at that in the good old U of K. And it's basically about a story into how the Pinball Museum that they set up came about, and a little bit about why they charge what they do, and what their whole sort of motivation is behind starting their museum. So worth a nice little read. A bit about the New York mafia ban of gambling and so on. So yeah. Always good to see stuff about pinball museums, of course.
So this
Got
is
one here from Sean Stevenson, and this is one I actually had a note right here to bring up, but we'll give Sean credit and Neil since they brought it up. And it's Super Mario Brothers 64 playing on Commodore 64. Now, I always thought this would be a pretty good match because they're quite similar in CPU power and graphical power and sound and all that. So I always thought, and of course we had the Gianna sisters, which was a high quality knockoff of Mario on the C64, and sure enough, somebody went through and made a Mario Brothers for the Commodore, and it looks quite amazing. So I am downloading the files right now.
You'll have to be quick.
I was going to say, and unsurprisingly, Nintendo have since a couple of days ago obviously issued a DMCA takedown notice and keep trying to chase around and stop it being available. But you know what these things are like. It's the internet.
It's out
how
there.
Big is a fucking how big is a C64 disc image? It's going to be tiny, so that can get passed around piece of piss. No problem.
Well, let's see. 109 kilobytes. It's complete.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh no! Now Nintendo knows I have it.
Oh no!
Wait for the C&D order.
They're going to come and ruin your neighborhood.
CRT and D64. There it is. I'm looking at it right now. Thanks, Nintendo.
We should review
How about
it or
Nintendo just sends out a tweet going, "Well played, Commodore. Well played," and then everybody likes Nintendo.
I know. I mean, what harm is this doing them? They're never going to make it on the C64 themselves. They're never going to sell it. It's not losing them any money. It's gaining them a following, if anything. Gaining them maybe some fans that have never heard of Nintendo, if there are any out there. It's doing them absolutely no harm. But I guess it's just that thing of if you don't protect your IP, you lose the right to protect your IP. So
there's other ways to protect it in other places. This is not the time to pick that battle.
No. And it took the guy 7 years to make it as well. Jesus.
I'm not surprised. It looks good.
Yeah, it does.
I can't wait to load it up on my my SD card drive and play it on a original TV. That's going to be awesome.
Yeah.
Really cool.
Really cool.
Really cool.
So we had the 30th anniversary of the Game Boy come round last week. So there's a bunch of Game Boy related news, and some of the ones I've picked out. There was a Polygon article of the 30 greatest Game Boy games, which I was quite surprised at what was on there. It kind of almost seemed like a bit of a hipstery, or what would be cool to say is the best 30 games, rather than what are actually the 30 best games that people, that we would come up with as part of our top 10 type thing. So a quick skim down the list, starting off with X, which it's an interesting game. If you don't know, it's basically a precursor to Star Fox. Did a very, very slow wireframe 3D thing on the Game Boy. Dylan Cuthbert took it to Nintendo and they were like, "Nah, you can't do 3D on a calculation on a Game Boy in anywhere near real time," and we're quite surprised with it. And that sort of supposedly got him in the door to do the Star Fox stuff and all that business. But then we've got like Trip World, Game Boy Wars, which if anyone knows was started off as Famicom Wars, more popularly been the Advance Wars series. But the Game Boy Wars is a very, very sort of unknown part of that. Avenging Spirit, Cave Noir, some more interesting things, so like Space Invaders. So that that gets a shout for having a SNES ROM built into it and doing some cool stuff with audio on the SNES Super Game Boy. More typical things like Gargoyle's Quest and Metroid 2, but then like Mole Mania shoved in there. And things like that. So yeah, there's an interestingly odd combination of things in there to a degree. So that was the first one I got, and then the other one that day as well was a tool that is called, what's it called? It is called GB Studio, and it's basically I suppose it's an adventure game maker at the moment for the Game Boy, and you can just load in graphics and set up text, sort of NPC interaction, which is basically just sort of text boxes and things, and decision trees based off that. There's no kind of fighting action, or there wasn't when it was written, but I'm sure there's some interesting stories if you were so inclined. You could make sounds pretty easy to use and creates actual Game Boy compatible ROMs, but will also publish to an HTML5 like web version, so you can put them on, where other sites that you want. So if you're interested in futzing around with a bit of a story to tell and on a Game Boy, check out GB Studio.
So I got a couple remarks on that, but first, take a look at the screen. This is the kind of funny stuff that I guess turns up around this joint. I was looking for for my other Commodore SD drive, the one that I had, the first one I had, because I was going to write that SD card here after the show, and I find a buffer tube for an M16. It's part of the recoil control group for an M16, just fucking randomly laying there. Go figure. I've been looking for that too. So out of that list of 30 games, I was scrolling through it, and I was very curious to find what I would have put number one is Tetris. They have it at number 6.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Tetris was a huge thing for the Game Boy. I have said 100 times before, this will be number 101. If they had just sold the Game Boy with Tetris, and it was just if it was the Nintendo Tetris, I think they would have, not, long-term generational-wise, but of the first generation Game Boy, I think they would have sold almost as many if it had just been a Tetris player. That's how good it was. So I know that if it was just Tetris, I would have paid the money for that because there was no handheld LCD that could do anything remotely like that, So that's number 6. All right, well, what's the top 5? Zelda Link's Awakening. Okay, maybe. I don't think it has the importance of Tetris, but it's a bigger, better game. Okay, fine. Wario Land. I liked Wario Land, but Pokemon. Look, I have taken shit for giving Pokemon credit. I picked Pokemon a couple times. Even though I don't care about it, you cannot deny that is a colossal success engine, right?
First Pokemon was fantastic.
But more so than, Tetris, I don't see it. So number 2, the Game Boy camera.
No.
Who cares? Really.
There's some interesting things about the hardware and about the software they put on it, but yeah, it's an interesting curio. It's not a top 30. It's a novelty. Yeah.
And then number 1, Donkey Kong.
That's okay, a good Donkey Kong.
It's a great title. It should be in the top 10, but it is not Tetris. It did not do for the Game Boy. I mean, Tetris made that was the killer app, and Nintendo completely lucked out. That was a launch title, but interesting ranking.
So something else that came up in chat, Chris Tapp has said, "Hi guys, do you think all the gaming channels on YouTube have had a negative effect on retro gaming, such as putting prices up? Most YouTubers seem more obsessed with collecting and the value of games." I don't think that's down to YouTube channels. I think as things get older and rarer, the price goes up naturally, just by its very nature.
I wouldn't necessarily say that. I think there's been a definite increase in the popularity of retro in general. But then also there's been a crossover with, so you see it like, so there was a while where the NES games were really expensive as the people who were kids with them got into lots of disposable income and were able to spend it on getting their NES games back. And then it moved into the SNES stuff, and the NES kind of cooled off a bit, and SNES stuff got really expensive, which had been dirt cheap for years. And then now if you look around expos, it's starting to have crept through the PS2 and into through the PS1 and into PS2 sort of era. They're starting to get that's where the buzz is starting to be again, because there is people like I say, getting into this sort of age where, oh, I've got a job now, I've got loads of income suddenly, I'm gonna rebuy all this stuff. So I think that's an element of it. I mean, certainly if you think about Spectrum C64 Amstrad cassettes, there's not a lot on there that's valuable anymore these days. That's sort of come through and passed and gone. I think NES is kind of settled down to an area, and Famicom, and there'll always be some rare stuff that still commands a high price because of the built up. With the internet, it built up a kind of a whole mystique about some certain titles. And I don't think that'll ever die away. But I think we're definitely now going to start to see SNES get 16-bit games cool off again. But that's just sort of, how it seems going around the expos, certainly, and sort of looking at eBay. It's definitely not where I was 15 years ago, when people just couldn't give away the stuff fast enough to me because I was the dumbass willing to take it on and acquire mountains of Xboxes and SNESes and all sorts of crap that I've then shifted onto other people in the past.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I appreciate the content that's out there. Some of it is a little self-indulgent, like where somebody's just going to tell you why they think something's great or whatever. I mean, but what they have to say isn't really interesting. There is some of that. There is some really interesting views at hardware you've not seen. But I mean, YouTube's a weird place, man. You can post a video literally of showing how you like wash dishes on a sailboat. That's 2 minutes long, and you will get 4,000 views. Or you can post a video of something that has never been done, never been seen, some super rare piece or some interesting content, and you'll get 6 watches. It's the most bizarre thing ever. But I don't think there's too much content. I mean, the more content there is, the more likely there is to be something that I find interesting. So, to this day, and I'm not just saying it because he's a friend of the show, but I think Willie with Arcade USA does some of the best stuff. His videos are short, interesting, and show you, instead of a lot of the prattle, it kind of gets to showing you what you came there for. So, and Willie's just super humble, great host. So I truly enjoy his work. And then there's a lot of crap too, but what are you gonna do?
I was thinking about this today. So who knows how long YouTube will be around? Websites come and websites go. When MySpace was there.
Let me jump in on that real quick.
Yeah.
I was thinking the exact same thing the other day, Mike. I'll tell you why. For the last 90 days or so, every time I go to YouTube to watch anything, right? Now, we've all seen for the last 2 to 3 years, they've been really trying to squash and push down, private content, just like, small videos uploaded by random people. They've been trying to push that down and trying to push up revenue generating content, And what I've seen over the last 90 days is every time I go to YouTube to watch anything, especially on a mobile device, it really wants you to sign up for that YouTube Premium.
Yeah. Want
like
to
hardcore.
Want to keep watching YouTube when your phone's off? No.
Yeah.
No, not really.
So my guess were, I'm thinking that within a year or so, YouTube will be predominantly a paid service with no content other than that's of any consequence. So it'll evolve. Somebody else will pop up and do what YouTube was doing 10 years ago. And they'll be back to interesting, small-scale videos of people showing their homegrown content. So, yeah, we'll see.
So the thought I had was, in however many years' time it takes for that to happen, you're going to get a whole, what must almost be a generation of people out of work with no YouTube income, going to job interviews, and the interviewer is saying, so where have you worked in the last 10 years? Well, I've been on the internet. I've been making videos in my bedroom.
I'm a content influencer. I influence content.
Yeah.
I talk about nail polish and people buy it.
Dear me. So I was also watching, I was reading up on what's it called? It's in here. The StarPath Supercharger, which allowed you to load games on cassette into a 2600. And shortly after that, Per Holmstrom sent in this Atari 2600 development setup, which allows you to do pretty much that. So you have a 2600 with this StarPath supercharger plugged into it. That's rigged up to an IBM PC, which you can use to code in assembler. Then you convert that to an audio file, which you then play through the cassette into this StarPath Supercharger. And I had never heard of the StarPath Supercharger before. And then I heard about it twice in a month.
I'm sure it's been mentioned on the show at some point.
I don't recall it, or if I've forgotten it. It was in another life.
I'm certainly aware of it.
How many games were there out on it? I've never heard of it, never mind seen one.
What's that, the StarPath Supercharger?
Yes.
Oh, no, I got 2 of them right here, and then all the games. They are neat, man. I mean, it's what it is. It's basically a bank of RAM and enough processing power to write, and a modem, okay? And you know how modems work. They turn data into sound into data, right? Mm-hmm. So it's got the receive side of a modem, and then it's got some minuscule processing power, and then a bank of RAM. And the whole idea is you power this thing up in the game, right? You press play on a cassette. It transfers the program via audio into the cartridge. And until you turn it off, you've got that game, right? Mm-hmm. And the idea being cassettes were cheaper to produce than hardware. So once you bit the bullet and bought the StarPath Supercharger, you then owned the platform, and then they could sell you games cheaper on cassette. Now, a couple good games were made for it, and I think it's a technological novelty. It's interesting. And in fact, the StarPath Supercharger, as I recall, was the basis for the Cuddle Cart, which was the first Atari multi-cart, in that it could be flashed with any one given ROM at any time. So, yeah, it's a neat piece of hardware. Give me a sec. I'll grab one off the shelf here.
How many games were there?
Hold on. I got them all here. Let's see here.
And luckily, Scott can count. So.
Well, you know. All right, let's see. Almost there.
We'll wait.
All right, so some of it, unfortunately, is in a box. I thought I had them all sitting here, but I don't. But I got a couple, so I can show you real quick. This, I'll hold it up to the camera. Let me go over to the video so I can see when it's visible. Scrolling. Okay, there we go. Should be on camera here before too long. And you can see it's a large cartridge, right? And there's a cord coiled on it that you can see there. That cord is the 1/8 inch mono audio jack. So that cord would go over to the tape recorder. So you hit play, and again, this receives the audio, turns it into data, and has it available for the cartridge, right? So here's a couple of the games. Now, the first one you would get is this one here called Phaser Patrol. Now, Phaser Patrol should be up here on the screen in a moment. Oh, that's not good. Why is it not playing?
It will in a minute. I was dicking about trying to get it full screen and it didn't work.
Oh, okay.
You're back.
So this is Phaser Patrol number 1. So what it is you open it up and you've got the Arcadia Supercharger in it. That'll be on screen before too long. And then, of course, you've got your cassette. So much like a Commodore 64, a Spectrum, or whatever you've got, or your Amstrad, you have a cassette with the game on it. And here it is, Phaser Patrol, okay? So that's number 1. And what's really neat about that is it says right there on the spine, number 1, and it'll be up shortly. So the next thing is Number 2, Communist Mutants from Space, which is a damn fine game. I mean, it'll be up, give it another minute, it'll be up on the screen.
Which is the worst aspect of that? The fact they're communists, the fact they're mutants, or the fact they're from space?
And how does the Atari 2600 with its limitations, like, give you the convincing idea that they're communists?
Well, they got you to pay for their game. I mean, I guess. Isn't that communism, getting people to buy things with other people's money?
Yeah.
So, yeah, there it is. There's the cassette, and so the later games. So obviously, number 1 includes Phaser Patrol and the the Starpath Supercharger. Then number 2. So when they get on, and then number 3 here is Fireball, which is another pretty good game. These are actually good games. These aren't crap games. So if you look at it from the side there, once it catches up, you can see you get 1, 2, 3, and so forth. So the Starpath Supercharger games, I think it's coming up any moment now. When they sit on the shelf, it's pretty cool. You get all lined up with their numbers. And it's a neat piece of hardware. It overcame some of the cost of the games, being produced on cartridges. So it's just an interesting thing to own, by all means.
So a couple of stupid questions: are they the regular format audio cassettes, and do the games contain more data than the cartridges did?
I can't remember off the top of my head how much RAM. I know that the Starpath did give you extra RAM. I can't remember the exact specs, but the cartridges had a path to evolve into, originally they were 4 or 8 kilobytes, right?
Mm-hmm.
But they came up with bank switching, so you could have several banks of 4 or 8 kilobytes. You could switch between them, right? So this could have obviously evolved the same way. So out of the box, it had a little more capability than the cartridges, but the cartridges could also evolve to be as capable with bank switching. So it's not so much a question of capability, it's a question of producing games at a lower price, total cost of ownership. And also, once you've invested in the supercharger, of course, you're going to be inclined to, to buy games in that family, if you will, since you invested in the hardware.
Yeah.
So, listeners, all you need to do is send us $50,000 and we will do a top 10 Starpath Supercharger games.
Yeah.
You can dictate our content for just $50,000. What a bargain.
Or for 100,000, we'll give you even more. Full service podcast.
Happy endings.
So one here from Spinal. Our final 2 come from Spinal. It's Wide GB. It's on screen right now. Hi guys, I just stumbled upon an interesting Game Boy emulator that displays a larger than usual visual screen. It apparently does this by tracking the background tile data and keeps displaying it past the screen edges. Not sure how well I explained that. Probably better than I did, but here's a link to give so you guys can read for yourselves. There is a video of it on screen there. And it's almost like it's reading the extra game data and just showing it in a bigger window, I'm guessing, is what's going on there. But there's also a version called Wide NES, and that display on screen there probably explains it a little bit better than the Game Boy one did. You just get to see what's beyond the regular screen, which is pretty cool. You could probably play NES in widescreen. Wonder if you can change the aspect ratio.
That is pretty cool.
Yeah.
I mean, you always knew the other data was there. You've seen, the one thing I liked about Nintendo Power, I've never been a big magazine person. Even back in the day, if I was faced with the opportunity of, okay, $3 for a magazine or $3 for a Commodore 64 discount game, I'd buy the game every time. But one of the things I always did like about Nintendo Power is those cool layouts they would do of the entire game, or like the Zelda Overworld. That was some good stuff.
Yeah. So we're all out of news, people. It's been a fairly lengthy one, fair few news items. So thank you to everyone who sent them. Keep sending them in, so we'll have more to go through next month. We didn't do prizes, I've just remembered. We didn't do prizes.
Yeah, at the start it was just Leithco and Gareth Hamer, and they felt very guilty about having already taken so many prizes off me that they were like, well, we'll give it a rest and wait for it, see if anyone else turns up before prompting Mike for any sort of prize alarms rather than us winning stuff again.
Yeah, well,
so listeners, if you want to win stuff, get your asses in live news. There is plenty of stuff to give away.
We'll have to give double away next month.
All right. Fortunately, I've made a fancy new... That was one of the things I did this month. I made a fancy new page for you all to browse.
Give us the URL, random.
It's www.retrogamingroundup.com/prizes.
No way.
And there will be a gallery constantly updated with all the things that we've got to give away.
Wow.
I am looking at this right now.
And it's fully responsive, so you can look at it on a mobile and it will look just as pretty. Woo.
I'm going to show it on screen.
That was also the plan, because everyone could never see the photos and things, so I thought, well, Mike can just put it up on the stream.
Wow,
and scroll
look
through.
at that beauty there.
That's some fancy coding.
That's what you could win next month, and we'll see if we have anything to add to it. Although most of the stuff I want to give away is going in the Lucky Dip at the moment. So don't forget any shit you've got to give away, random. Save some for the Lucky Dip.
Well,
not these books.
Assuming I'm gonna see you before the Lucky Dip.
You're coming to Revival. When you were drunk, you said you're coming to Revival for the Saturday.
Yeah, maybe.
Never
the other
mind,
thing
maybe.
I'm thinking is...
You have to. You're filming our Kickstarter video.
Well, see, I
Damn
was thinking
straight.
if Scott's over a few days earlier and there's fun
Oh,
shenanigans at
there
Bletchley
will
Park
be.
and stuff, and no doubt Arcade Club, I've got tons of days off work to take and not really much I can think of to do with them. So maybe I'll take some days off in the week to hang out with you guys and then bid you adieu for the weekend and not have to go near Walsall.
You can come to the Anderton Boat Lift.
Wait, why wouldn't you go to the main destination, man?
I know.
I've got prior engagements, unfortunately.
Yeah, but that's on the Sunday. When you were drunk, you told us it was only the Sunday.
True.
I'm going off what drunk random Dave said, and that was that he's coming.
I always go by what drunk random says.
Yeah, and that was that he's coming down
Never
on the
trust what
Friday
drunk
with
random
us,
says.
staying the Saturday and going home on the Sunday morning. That was what he said. And I think we got Ben to say the same as well, if I remember rightly. I wasn't as drunk
Possibly
as you two. Well, with that, listeners, we shall bid you adieu for another month. So thanks for hanging out in chat. Thanks for chatting among yourselves and with us. And, Video Masters TV just dropped in. Yes, you did miss everything, John.
Oh, how unfortunate. We were just talking about, good quality YouTube. And one of the things, Willie Culver's, Arcade USA, and also Video Masters,
Yeah.
Yeah, you didn't mention that until you'd come into chat, but...
Well, guess what reminded me of that?
John popping up in chat for the last 2 minutes. You need to get here earlier next month, John. And send us some news items. Send us an update on Video Masters TV. And we'll give the good info to the good listeners. All right, people. Say good night, everybody.
Good night, everybody.
Buddy.
Good night, everybody. Bye.